Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports, our weekend program, Saturday Sports Special. It's glad to have you once again after a very long time, I should say. Yeah. Well, as you know that because of the general elections in Grenada, we had a little sabbatical, but we're back, and of course, so many things happened between there and then, lots and lots. There was the GFA elections of the Grenada Football Association with obviously a new executive, and things like that. And what again? you know, um, so many other things went through over the past few weeks while we were away. Uh, but we are back and we have quite a bit to cover, and it's also an open discussion. But we will try to sort of recap some of those things because what we were trying to get during that election campaign was to get some idea of what the major political parties had in mind in terms of sports and sports development. And, it was, you know, it was digging and digging and digging. Somehow, what should I say? It's only one political party that basically had some sort of what they call transformational or transformative, I should say, agenda. Let me get the word correctly. Yeah, transformative agenda on sports, and basically, spoke about sports on the platform. But we wanted to hear something more in depth about what sportsmen and sportswomen and even our sports enthusiasts can look forward to in terms of real development, in terms of sports. Few. We'll try to see if we can decipher some of what was said and hear what you have to say as well. No doubt, the focus now will be preparation for we have the Caribbean Games coming up in Guadeloupe starting sometime next week. Then we also have the World Championships. We have the World Under 20s, that's athletics. And then we have the Commonwealth Games. Well, the Commonwealth is not just athletics, but we do have the Commonwealth Games. And by the way, there will be cricket in the Commonwealth Games, women's cricket, right? In the Commonwealth Games in August. So we have quite a bit of sporting major activities coming up. We do have cricket, ongoing cricket, Bangladesh versus Bangladesh there in the West Indies, and there in St. Lucia in the test match, the second test. And that is ongoing. And then, we have bits and pieces going on. I know there was some mention about swimming, I think, and about the long-awaited swimming pool for the Grenada Amateur Swimming Association, and we really hope that could be a reality in terms of swimming. I'm just waiting on Mr. Our my usual tag team in Toronto. He is on already. He's just getting himself organized, and we'll try to hear a little more about what folks gathered from the politicians on the platform in terms of sports development for Grenada. But ongoing this weekend, a lot of lots of track and field in terms of the national championships. Jamaica, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, national championships on Galo, United States, Canada, the ongoing national championships. So in case probably the time we finish this program, you should be able to catch some of the action on television. The national championships. Exciting that last evening it was exciting to see Sherika Jackson, winning the women's 100 meters in Jamaica ahead of the favorite at the time, Elaine Thompson, because Fraser Price did not compete in the semifinals into the final because she's automatically guaranteed a place in the World Championships as a defending champion. So it was interesting to see Sharika Jackson winning the women's 100 meters. And Ewan Blake, yes, Ewan Blake, as they say, the old man. You know, what some exciting encounters we saw. And then also, don't forget, in the under 20 category, saw this young girl running, you know, you know, wow. I mean, the under 20, the world under 20 should be very, very exciting, especially for the Caribbean. Stay tuned for that. Let me say good afternoon to my pal Rudy and Silva. And Rudy, and as you know, not in um, North Carolina where I am now, but he's in Toronto, Canada, and he is well, he's getting himself organized.
Yeah.
Just about when I
How you doing?
joined, Rudy had a little problem with his camera. Let me see if I have him now. Yeah, I think I do have him now.
How
So good
you
afternoon
doing?
to
How
you,
you
Rudy.
doing?
Yes,
I am
good
good.
afternoon.
It's good to see you, man.
Well, it's nice
It
seeing you once
it,
again.
it
And
has been a while, even though we have spoke quite a bit in
yeah,
between the short time.
yeah,
Um, but it is certainly good to see you, and I can say there's a smile on my face because I gracefully love what I'm seeing in terms of sports over the weekend and the past weekends. But I'm extremely happy for the forwardness I believe Grenada is taking right now with new leadership, and I'm extremely happy that I think a lot of my knowledge and skills can put to work now that I
mhm,
can reach out to them, and a lot of my knowledge, like I said, and skills could help make Grenada move forward. So I am looking forward to a lot of that in the next few years.
yeah. Well, I'm hoping that whoever is in the leadership of sports in terms of the directorate, in terms of the politicians, the government, the administration, that there can be some level of seriousness in terms of sports. I was speaking to someone some time ago, um, about a few months ago, and the whole area of sports came up, and you know, and they asked me, by the way, who is the minister of sports, and it was like, you don't know who's the minister of sports? I said, no, I don't know who's the minister of sports. I have not heard from anyone in terms of whether it's a statement or whatever it is in terms, and but that decides the point in terms of that. But it's just that, you know, sports to some extent was not taken to the on the serious burner, except that when someone does well, there is some level of what I should say presence, especially on the airport, and these sort of things like that. So and shake hands and things like that. So, but it needs some more visibility, and the visibility also should lead into some tangibles.
Yeah.
People should see that
Yeah.
sports is making some movement, and I'm certain that folks like me and you and others will be holding those people, we will be holding their feet to the fire.
Oh yeah, most
Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Like I said, I'm excited about that. We have to make some noise. I believe there will be some good transparency coming from this present administration once everything put in place.
Mhm.
But the minute we know who it is, we're gonna most likely try to get him on the show to to spread the word, his job, what his plans are for the
Well,
next few years, and
well,
so
let's
forth.
say,
So we'll be
let's
putting,
say, let's say, him or
yeah, him or her,
her.
yeah,
We don't
whoever
know
it
who it
may
is.
be,
Yeah.
and let us see where we go from there, and do the works of everything, man.
All right.
I'm extremely happy for that.
All
Yeah.
right. Hi, Donna Joseph. Good afternoon to you. Yes, yeah, from Grenada. Yes, I know you. From Grenada, and I know you're happy. Yes. So certainly we will try to get as much as possible in terms of you know, um, hearing what sort of direction we can expect sports moving. and we will be also be calling for some sort of all inclusiveness
Yeah.
regarding sports. There need to be more hands on deck. There need to be more visibility. And one of the things that
Yeah.
I'm hoping that could be possible this time around is the whole implementation, the idea of the implementation of the sports policy, national sports policy. I'm fully aware of the national sports policy because when it was passed in Parliament and with the whole issue of the consultations and all of that some years ago, I went to Grenada and be part of it in terms of the consultation, sitting at some of the consultative meetings and things like that. So I have an idea what's in it and how important it is for the development of sports, especially when it comes to the whole issue of incentives for sportsmen and sportswomen and even the administrators, the whole idea of giving national representatives, that sports representatives, the opportunity to train and train at a higher level without wondering whether or not when they return from national duties that they will have a job, these sort of things. The whole idea of providing incentives for tax incentives for even the business spaces, the private sector, so that if they have representatives in their establishment, they can get some sort of incentives from government, tax, things like that, to afford the national representatives time off to train and to represent. A lots of things.
It's a lot.
The whole issue of the parish sports council, the national sports council as well. The reorganizing of the Ministry of Sports is another of such that we need to get going. I know that was part of the national sports policy, the reorganizing of the Ministry of Sports. And what was surprising about that, and let me just give you a short story about that. And I'm hoping that the new administration doesn't make the problem of keeping people in, as they say, who are bent on sabotaging, destabilizing, etc., etc. Sorry for me using those sort of words. I think when I'm using it, people understand. But I recall back in when the sports policy passed in 2011, 2012, thereabouts, and because it involved the reorganizing of the Ministry of Sports, there were people in the Ministry of Sports who believed at the time that they will lose control, they will lose authority, and for some reason or the other, delayed and put all sorts of things to tactics, I should say, to delay the implementation of the national sports policy. Sad it was, I'm telling you. And it was just showing up the whole, how people were so concerned about their egos and their control and sort of thing. And I mean, people shouldn't be concerned about control and authority and things once the job is getting done, once the job. So they were moving a lot of the bureaucracy and things from the Ministry of Sports and putting work in the hands of people at the community level, sports at the community level, at the parish level, things like that. So, and that is one of the things I'm hoping we can get going. Let me just get a comment there from Donna is saying, if we as a people will just unite to build or expound on the sports policy, yes, that Mr. Patrick Simmons and the NEC of 2008 had passed, then we'll be on the right track. And similarly is what I was saying about the national sports policy. And what I can suggest for folks is that we may talk a lot about the national sports policy, but all you can do is just Google the national sports policy of Grenada, and I'm certain you will get a document because it was passed in the Houses of Parliament, etc., etc., and you will be able to see lots and lots of information regarding the national sports policy, and things like that. Rudian, what you have to say?
No, most definitely, and it's something that we really need to put in place. But before we do that, people have to understand and know what is the national sports policy. Just as the way you put it, like I really love listening to our new Prime Minister Dickie Mitchell. He's not there to get rid of people. But if you're not hardworking, you're not doing the work, you can't be in the positions. So it doesn't matter who you are. You have to work for the people of Grenada in every sector, and that's something that I hoping that he will stick his word to that. If you're there and you're not for the people, and then you shouldn't be there at all. So Grenada need to take another stand of hard work, and I think that's the area we should be all at all times. There's a lot of things that need to change, and a lot of stuff that the old ways this needs to be done, and it needs to change right now. And especially in sports, we need to see more things happening on the parish level and on the national level. But I'm really hoping that we're gonna be going in the right direction.
Mhm. So what I what I want to do now is, as I said, I try to get as much as possible. I try to follow and try to get something about sports, and not being partisan or anything. I got something from who's now at the time he was just political leader of the National Democratic Congress. He's now Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, and I will play because at one of the engagements, the town hall meetings.
Yeah.
Incidentally, it was held at the National Stadium, and someone asked a question regarding sports and what can be done for folks who even had represented people who have represented, Grenada, national teams in general. He used football in that case, and he used a particular player who has passed away since, may his soul rest in peace. Well, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear what at
Yeah.
the time
At the
who
time, yeah.
was just a candidate said about what are their plans and what they're hoping to do. Just bear with me for a few minutes as I bring that up.
A lot of footballers and things will pass through the world, represent Grenada on a national level. And most of them, if you see, you don't like to see where they live in. Take Dala, Franklin Doggy Drinking, one of the best of pass in the Caribbean, what I know growing up. And he died as a pauper. No one helped him. And right now we have a lot of others coming up. We have Corey, Ricky Charles, we have Nixon, we have Patty, a lot of them. And they don't play football for Grenada how much years, and the country give them nothing. Kirani got even one little gold medal, and you get everything.
All right, thank you very much for the questions and the observations. So it's a serious issue, and we've started addressing it by saying we have to treat sports as a career. And in addition to that, when our sportsmen and sportswomen are representing Grenada, both in and outside of Grenada, they need to be paid. Because we recognize that, to the point that you've made, that oftentimes our citizens represent us nationally, whether it's at football, whether it's at cricket, or any other sport. And they do so voluntarily, and they derive no benefit from it. And when they are no longer able to do so, unless they have some other job, essentially the things we've talked about, dying as a pauper, happens to them. And we've identified, for example, that is, in our view, what the National Lottery Authority, for example, the revenue derived from the National Lottery Authority was meant to address. And so, tying that into the question of the young men, we have to recognize that sport is a profession just like any other profession. And we have to invest in developing it. But it's not just the government alone. I was just saying to Claudia that I think there's a direct demise between Queen's Park Rangers and the construction of the stadium. Because the construction of the stadium literally took all the fields away. Right? And that's why concrete isn't development. Right? It's people. It's developing people and developing the skill set of people and enhancing their talent and empowering them. That is development. So from our perspective, from school all the way through adulthood, we have to view sport as a profession and as a job. And not all of us, as you said, are going to be academically inclined. And if you have kids who have the talent and who have the prowess, we need to enhance that in school. But you see, when they leave school, if we don't have strong club structures, there would be no place for them to go. And so one of the things, FIFA doesn't want governments to get involved in FIFA business, or so they say. But at the same time, we have to ensure that we encourage and promote strong and vibrant semi-professional and professional football clubs in Grenada. Precisely. But if you do that, if we do that, then you have the avenue for ensuring that when they transition from school, they transition into football clubs. And we need to make the football clubs semi-professional or professional so that they are paid for playing the football. So that you could have things like medical insurance, because you could have a star footballer, and if he breaks his foot or he gets injured, the career is over, right? So we need to talk about those things, to say, listen, you can buy insurance that allows you, if you break your leg, to earn income after your playing days are over, because you would have recognized that that's a risk. And those are some of the insurances that are available. So we have to take a very systematic approach. And so it's not just the club structure in Queen's Park, it's throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, because there are talented footballers all over Grenada, talented cricketers all over Grenada. And I want to say this because there are more opportunities now than ever before for all young men and women to pursue a career in sports as a profession. So even in the days of some of the star footballers you talked about, there wasn't that opportunity. There was no MLS in North America. There wasn't a Canadian Football League, right? So you have even more opportunities. When you take cricket, I mean, every significant country is playing cricket professionally. The 2020 all the time, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, all over the place. There are opportunities for all Grenadians to play in those leagues. And you don't have to be playing on a national team. And that's the way in which you recognize that sports become more commercial and more professional. You know, except for things like the World Cup and so on. It really is about playing for a club as a profession, and you get paid. And the better you become, and you tend to become better, the more you play, is the more money you earn. And that's why people like Chris Gill and those guys became stars, not just in the Caribbean, but they're stars wherever they play. And we have that talent, we have that ability here. But if we don't ensure that sport is played at the primary and secondary school level, and if we don't have that transition where they can get into clubs, and you see, if you have semi-professional clubs and professional clubs, the clubs themselves will be recruiting the players from primary school and secondary school days. They will be hunting them because they will be looking for the next star, the next generation of footballers all the time. And then in turn, the bigger clubs in Europe and the US will know that we have a semi-professional league or professional league, and in turn, Trinidad, Jamaica will in turn be looking to us to recruit our players so that they could then make it on the big stage. So we need organization, we need structure, but we don't have that. And in fact, I'm hoping there is a new president of the Grenada Football Association. He's a colleague of mine. He's a lawyer as well, former footballer. He used to have the Marlon Green Scholarship, so I know. And in addition to that, he's a former employee of FIFA. So I know without a doubt, he has the experience, the exposure, and I believe he has the good heart, no pun intended, to take football in Grenada back to where it belongs and to move it forward, no pun intended either. So I'm certainly using the opportunity to congratulate him. I hope he's listening, and I hope he heard what you said. And perhaps we can start by beginning to recognize some of the fallen footballers who have particularly represented Grenada on a national level and who may be in dire straits now as a starting point to beginning the revolutionizing and the moving forward with our football in Grenada. So thank you very much for the question.
Okay then, so heard there from the, well, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who at the time was the political leader. Well, he's still the political leader of the National Democratic Congress, but as a candidate at the time, speaking, about sports, and it was just one of the few, I should say. I think Patrick Simmons also had made some remarks on the campaign trail regarding the national sports policy as well. That's Patrick Simmons, the former sports minister. But I thought that contribution by Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, capsulated a lot of what they had in mind in terms of strong and vibrant, well, he was calling, I would say, for strong and vibrant semi or professional, leagues and, things like that. So, well, in the case of football, I should say, and there was another point I think he made at some point where they discussed the whole issue of where the whole idea of folks getting to, that's locals, getting trained in various areas of sports administration, sports medicine, sports, sports therapy, all these sort of things. And then the whole question too about whether or not, Rudy, and that will come down to your neck of the woods in terms of, sports agents, for example, all these things, why it is in a place like in Grenada, we have so many sportsmen and sportswomen. Some of them are professionals, but yet we have no agents, from Grenada who understand the culture, who understand the athletes. So an example was that of someone like an Anderson Peters, and after Anderson Peters, whoever it is coming up, we need to have people who are trained and understand and who can probably, fill the reins of a sports agent, a sports manager, things like that. So there's also some points he made regarding more opportunities available. And I think that is important because now more than ever, there are more opportunities available for sportsmen and sportswomen, right? As you know, before it was so competitive. It was so much about who you know and things like that. So now it's so much available. And sports becoming a professional, becoming more professional and more commercialized. Also, he made the reference to the Chris Gayle and others who became big millionaires, as you could say, in just a short order, things like that. And the importance, the issue too has to do with, and something we have been calling for on this program many times, organization and structure. Organizational and structure, they are needed and important enough if you need to have strong club structures, as well as, and that is the highlight, I would say, and for me, the big takeaway, the issue of sports at primary and secondary schools. We have to go back to the basics. Primary and secondary schools have to be more involved. There have to be more programs at the primary and secondary school level. Over to you, Rudian.
I am going to start in one area and lead to exactly where we want to be. Education is a very important thing, but education is not always based on school. It's on educating yourself on a specific matter, situation, or subject. And I think that's one of the failures of a lot of Grenadian. They are not educated on certain things. They just come out and they hearsay. Like I said, I'm leading somewhere. I even go back with the election. Most people was on a party line election, and most Grenadians are like that. My family support this party, says it's a party line, and they're not educating themselves on what's going on in the neighborhood or what's going on in the community. They're just going on party line, so they don't care on that side. So a lot of things that he said there that is very important, and everything he said there it's like he was on our show, and I believe he probably listened to our show a few times, because most of the things he talked about is what we've been talking about on the show over the past year, even before this election come about, before his campaign, before he probably even think of running. We've been speaking about the exact same thing: structure, organization, the young youths, elementary school starting, which is the primary school, starting sports. And we talk about that all the time. We also talk about communication. Let us know what is going on. Many times you try and bring people on here so that we can hear what their plan is, where they want to go, and how they're gonna get there. Nothing. So one thing I can say that, like I said, I really do believe that his words is going to come into action. It may not happen tomorrow, but his words will come into action. But we just have to wait and see. But he's on the right path, no different from the things that we want, the things that we want to see.
Well,
it is really when Michael, we are international right now. We travel back and forth. And sometimes if someone don't, a lot of times if you don't travel or if you don't do the research, especially in the time today, you punch up anybody's name, you can find something on them on social media or on the internet or on Google. You punch in my name, you're going to see stuff from me on the Olympics, stuff I did in track and field, my university, all this stuff will be there. Just punching up my name. And so when you have people who don't open up themselves for that experience, and they just go out there now and they say a lot of things now, a lot of stuff is coming out from the mouth, but there's no action, there's no substance in it because they don't have that experience. It's important for people. You want change, you have to see change in somewhere else. You know, we are moving in this millennium time, but we as Grenadian cannot stay in the old days. We cannot stay in the 80s. We cannot stay in the 70s. We got to move away from that and come into the 21st century. We cannot stay there. So a lot of things that a lot of people is doing or a lot of people are saying is from the old days. We got to come out from that. We talk about agents now. We got to see our soccer players go abroad, cricket, go abroad, track and field athletes, go abroad. You know, the young man asked the question clearly. He said, Kirani got a medal and they almost give him Grenada. What would you have for the next athlete to get a medal? If you give everything already, and I'm not trying, it's not the fault of Kirani.
Yeah, well, so I think the point is, and you know, I don't think the guy came across as clearly as possible, but we understand what the point is.
In a sense,
the point has to do with what it is do you have in place to ensure that others who may not even reach the level of Kirani James can at least have something or get something. You know, it's interesting to note, and I would say it here, that someone as Hazel and Regis, Hazel Buckles now, for all that she did in terms of representing Grenada, even as an elite professional athlete, even along with an Aline Francis, for example, during the Aline Francis era. Hazel and Regis has not been given, she was promised land, she has not got the land. She wasn't even given a passport as all the others were
diplomatic passport,
and what have you and thing. And she is still willing to give back to Grenada, you know.
Michael, I said to you, and I'm gonna say this here just the same way, Michael. I've been to the Olympics for Grenada in 2000, and it's what 22 years later. I've never heard back from Grenada again from that day. And it just shows it's the same thing. After competing for Grenada at the Olympic game, I never heard back from them. And where I'm saying is that what incentive now? And we're not asking for anything, you know. But what is it there now for the younger people to come? What do you have in place for them? What incentive do you have for them? A good athlete, as we always talk about track and field. A good athlete could get a pair of shoes. That would give him an incentive to continue doing the sport. Not necessarily say, oh, he's going to get a scholarship, or he's going to, you know, but at least he's continued doing it. He's going to, a soccer shoes, they will continue doing it. What is incentive in there for them? Where are the organization? Where are the clubs? I get it hard on my parish. I go after them.
Well, that's why I think it's important that there are sections of the national sports policy, and by the way, I'm telling you, and I'm giving a warning there, that we will be holding those politicians, their feet
accountable.
On fire. And that's why I was looking for, and I'm documenting and archiving.
Well, I do the same thing too. A lot of the speeches I save it.
Yeah.
so that when the
And
time do come, I can reach out and said, "This is what you say." We don't expect it to be done tomorrow.
no,
It wouldn't happen tomorrow. I know a lot of people thinking, "Oh,
and you
right
might
away
not,
they're going to get things done." It's not
yeah,
going to happen like that. It's
and you
going to
may
take a
not
little
do,
time.
and you may
Yeah,
not do exactly as said,
as they
because
said, yeah,
things can change, you can tweak, you can refine,
yeah,
whatever. But at least we want to see something being done. So if you talk about incentives and things like that for our sportsmen and sportswomen, we want to see something as incentive. If you say sports at the primary and secondary school level, we want to see action at that level. I mean, and again, I'm saying not tomorrow, but at least there should be something in place. Get the
but
wheels
but but, but let me
turning.
say that to Michael.
And at the same time, just before you come in there, hold your thought. There are some low-hanging fruits,
Yeah,
and there's no reason why you cannot go and pick some of the low-hanging fruits. You don't have to wait until 2 or 3 years or a year before, or a
yeah,
few months
yeah,
before an election cycle to start ramming down all those things. There are low-hanging fruits that you can look at now and say, we can do that. So, for example, the National Sports Policy, the National Sports Council, for example, which was basically set up, office space, um, allocated, all these sort of things regarding the sports policy. But just that it was not implemented, one, but it was not implemented because just after that, the government at the time lost the election. And I didn't see why the new administration at the time did not continue on such,
continue on
because
certain things. Yeah,
the national sports policy was very, very important. So things like that, it's not so much reinventing the wheel.
yeah,
The machinery was already there, and things like that. So people were already identified. But of course, 10 years later, you obviously will have to look for new blood and all these sort of things. But
yeah,
things like the low-hanging fruits, I'm certain you can start saying, here, this is the bucket list, these are the priorities, and these are things that we can do from, from the start. you
yeah.
know. There are other projects, obviously, that will take time, that will need funding and things like that. Okay? But you need to get certain things, you need to have certain things in motion. And by the way, um, when you're in opposition, you should have a transition team. And your transition team should already be looking at certain things that you can do in the event that you form the government.
Yeah,
And it's not a situation of when you form the government, then you start thinking about, well, let me see what I can do.
we
Let
can
me
do.
see let me start thinking now. No,
It's
you
too
should
late
have at
then.
least, have an idea what are some of the things that
Yeah.
could be done and could be done probably within specific time period, time frame, all these sort of things. We like to discuss sports, so that's just our
No,
discussion.
and one of the things that one of the key things in my personal opinion is certainly renewing the mind. Um and it's something that we haven't we really have to do. We cannot think of doing sports for Grenada or Grenadians and want to go on the international stage.
Mm.
We have to think international. Because the way the international do certain things is not the same. So if we're not on that level as international, then our athletes would not be able to perform on the international level. So we have to think international while being in Grenada and running sports in Grenada. We got to do it on a higher level than the local and usual level that we do things and expect to go on the world stage and perform. That's what I think. We have to
Right.
renew the mind in that sense.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you. Edwin Sam, Mr. New Jersey, good afternoon to you. Mr. B, you have been saying this for quite some time. Minister of Sports songs, good for you. No, that's a tall order, man. But let me see. There's another. Let me see. Let me read that one. Cannot expect things to move forward when we have the same set of administrators in the different associations who have been there since the 70s and the 80s and do not want to advance with the times. Younger people who have fresh ideas and experience on how to advance the different sports and disciplines in Grenada cannot even get a chance to give an opinion or give opinions.
And again, if I could add on that,
I
this
think
is what we've been
on the
speaking
point.
on this platform. It's exactly what I've been saying. It is time for a younger generation, and we need the older folks, and I keep saying this, we need the older folks as the foundation.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's not so
But
much
we
about
need,
a
but we
whole.
need that
Yeah,
new
you need to
generation
have.
to
You
go
need to
up
have.
the foundation
Yeah,
and
you need
pass
to
it
have.
on. Because
Yeah.
if someone leave right now,
Mhm.
what do the person coming in knows? They
Yeah.
don't know
So
anything.
yeah, so it's a mixture of youth and experience. I think is
Yeah,
very, very important. Um, and therefore, oh, it was actually, well, I don't know. Probably you didn't put in your name. He says it's Joel Phillip. Not sure why my name not showing up. Probably you didn't put in your name. I think you had to ensure that your name is in. And thanks, Joel. And well, Joel is no stranger to the program. Certainly, I think it's a very important point that Joel is making there. And I think this is one of the problems that we have as we see it too, not just with sports administrators, but we also saw it in politics as well, And I think that point that Joel is making there is very, very important. And by the same time, what you're saying also is also important, Rudian. We need a mixture of youth and experience. It's not a situation where you just, take, two barai, you just wipe the slate clean and then people have to be, searching and trying
yeah.
to find it, to
And
find
I
their
think they
bearing.
need to, yeah, and I think they
Yeah.
need to have people under, just like most ministers now. You have a senator who's under you. You expect the senator to be taken over when you retire, or when you decide to leave, or whatever the case might be. You have to groom someone. And in sports, I don't see that happening. In a lot of other sector in Grenada, I don't see the grooming of the younger generation coming up. Who is the generation that is taking over now?
Mhm.
We don't see them moving on. We keep doing the same old thing that used to work and hoping to get better and better results. Doing the old thing, getting new results is not going to happen. You have to renew that structure, renew that mind, bring in some people, some younger generation, and those who want to do it. Not anyone because they're young, you bring them in. Those who want, it doesn't have to be someone in sports. It doesn't have to be someone who plays sports. It doesn't always have to be, but that person could be knowledgeable to put some fresh ideas on the table. Sports now is run as a business.
Mhm.
Period.
Yeah,
We may
yeah,
not
yeah,
like it. We may
yeah.
not like it, and I never did. I remember when they brought a businessman to take over Athletics Canada. I was like, this man never played sports before. So why they bringing him? But he came in with a different, fresher mindset. He want things to run. So how things run? By doing things. And if you want the athlete to compete, they gotta go out there. So what happened? Canadian athletes at one point on the junior level down had to pay to represent Canada. This is Canada now. And that was maybe about 10 years ago. And then when he came in, that changed. So you cannot have the athletes paying to represent Canada. And that was run by an athlete at the time, or a former athlete. You have to have the fresher mind coming in and change some things around if you want the result, if you want better. And then for us to get on the world stage, we had to put ourselves out there, give the athletes an opportunity, give them the opportunity. And good or bad, don't forget where they come from. Don't forget them, because you're killing the sport right there. Because the next person coming up say, well, this is what you did to my friend. Why would I want to run for Grenada anymore? You forget him, you're going to forget me too. So all of that have to come in. And again, the key thing, in my opinion, is we need the mind to renew. It doesn't matter if it's the old folks who is still running it, but they
Well,
cannot do it the same way. The mind
yeah,
have to be renewed, and they have to do things based on how the world is running today. You
yeah.
understand?
But
Based on how it is running today.
it's glad that you said that because the, when you said that after the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, and you never heard again from the folks, it's a similar situation where
And if I'm going back,
with
Michael, let me go to one thing and I go back. It is 20 how much years now? And some of these people are still there.
yeah, yeah, and I know Joel Phillip is one who had, well, he spoke about it on the program some time ago, where how someone like Joel Phillip, who could have been or should have been the successor to Aline Francique at the time, and how he was basically discarded. These sort of things like
Yeah.
that too. But but again, it's a mentality. Okay. Let's hear what some folks are saying there. Brandon Lewis is saying they have widened the generational gap with this primitive mentality. Um, you know, then he says, it's the same culture at the top. Look at NNP. Um, does he does Keith Mitchell have a successor? Lee Coffey, who's a coach, track and field coach, is saying, Joel, very good point there. The older heads do need to give the younger ones an opportunity to take the lead in a few areas. Yeah, and I agree with in a few areas. It's not wholesale. It's just
No,
you need some of the older
like I
folks
said,
to stay on,
but
whether as mentors or whatever it
yeah,
is,
well,
you know?
like I said, let me put it
Yeah.
in a better word. Like I said, the foundation. You're building a house, and you need the foundation, and they are the foundation of
Mhm.
how certain things running, or how to get certain things going.
Yeah.
So you need that foundation, but they have to also learn that sooner or later that foundation is going to die out. They need to add new things. Look, they go to building a house. There is some cement, and I never knew that. There's some cement that will dry up in an hour. And there's some cement it takes 3-4 days for it to dry, fully dry. You see the difference, right? So you need that foundation, but sooner or later you might get a different sense of certain things, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and another comment coming from Kelvin Hector, Coco Short. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your entire family, wife, and kids. Well, Kelvin Hector is the father of Shavin Hector Charles, who competes in Jamaica, right? One of the top sprinters there. Good afternoon to you. He says the reason for all of this, is no one wants to work for free. That is why the sports, not to die, the older persons have to keep it going. Good point he's making there, because we have seen the whole issue of volunteer. And, it's a 50-50, yeah? I know my good friend Lincoln Toro Deputy will say, the days for volunteerism is probably
It's no
gone.
longer there.
Yeah, sports is all about commercialization, and all these things. Too much money in sports for people to do things free.
Yeah.
I know that is something they'll say. And but sometimes you have to look at it in the context of um, where places like Grenada, for example, where sports broadly is amateur. Okay? So that's what I'm saying is a 50-50. Yes, we have to, what we need probably is more investment, in sports and things like that. So, but it's sort of, 50-50 when it comes to volunteering in sports and things. But as it is, when you look at things like, for example, intercall and national championships and all these things, the success of these things is all have to do on the back of volunteerism. Okay, people are volunteering their time as track officials and things, and in some instances, and I can tell you that they do not get any monetary, compensation. They get probably a T-shirt to wear, and probably some refreshments and things like that. But most of them will do it for the love of the sport. Okay, for the love of the sport. In
I
other
mean, even
places,
extending to
yeah.
here, maybe about 3 weeks ago was the high school championship here that we're hosting. And again, like just the way you put it, was volunteer. I'm even me who is in charge of the one of the organizers, and I was in charge of all the field events. I had to pay for my own parking, because
Mhm.
when we called for the permits, some of the parking we had to give it up for certain things. That in the end, I had to pay for parking. I come from my pocket, but I'm going there and doing it. And it's volunteer. It's not about money. None of us get paid for what we did. It's volunteer. We
Mhm.
was there for 4 days at a high
Right.
school championship, and it's
Yeah.
just all volunteers. So that's so we just do it for the love of it. But as you said, sports now is not like it used to be, and that's what we talk about. A lot of this coaches now renewing their mind, educating themselves that a lot of sports out there in the world, people are being paid for. Most clubs now, coaches are being paid, organization is being paid for, the athletes have to pay, and they
Yeah.
renew their mind and say, hey, well, we have to do the same thing. And especially if they're doing it and there is no gratitude from the athletes or from the people, then you're looking at, hey, my time is no longer for free. So
And I think that is the point. I think that Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell was making, where you are saying about the whole issue of the sports, the professional aspect of sports, calling for strong and vibrant semi or professional league.
yeah,
However, before you can do that, you need to ensure that you have good organizational and structure in place for these clubs, because that's the only how they can go into a proper, or they can go into semi-professional leagues. For example, if the GFA has to organize or be involved, because sometimes the association don't necessarily have to, you can get private, sector to get
yeah,
involved in that. But you
yeah,
need to have to ensure that the clubs, and I stressing on clubs, not teams, you know, proper structures in place, the organizational aspect of it, and things like that have to be in place before you can do that. And it's not a matter of trying to open a league and then clubs trying to organize themselves. You have to ensure that they organize, ensure that they actually run and organize for a while, because you don't want to get in a situation where you have a league, they give the impression that they organize, and within a few months or a few weeks, things mash up, as we would say.
yeah.
So you want
And
to
and the,
ensure
and
that
one of the things,
there's a history
yeah,
of a structure and an organized, way of operating business.
and also they also have to be in a position where they cannot depend on the government.
Mhm.
It's you.
Yeah,
If you put
yeah,
a club together, you have to go there and get the sponsorship. Listen, I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
when I was
yeah,
a young lad,
yeah.
when I was growing up, I was 11 or 12 when we playing local football in Magna College ground. I went out, not myself alone, but me and other players. We went out and we get sponsored. We were the
Yeah,
only
yeah.
team. We were the youngest amongst everybody. The youngest player, maybe about 16, playing against the big men. But
Mm.
we are the only one who had a full uniform. Full
Right.
uniform. But because we
Yeah.
went out, we went in the town and we asked people. But we did it. The older ones didn't do it, but we
Mm.
did, and we had uniform. Even though they're gonna beat us because
Mm.
we're younger, they're older in that sense. But we are all they do is that we went and do it. So we didn't depend on the government.
Mm.
We also have to do it, and that's what some of the clubs out there have to do. There's a point when the government can help you, but then a
Mm.
lot of stuff falls on you. It's like the same thing go with life. The government can help you to a certain level, in your home, but they cannot raise you. They cannot give you monthly allowance in the sense of making sure that your bills are paid, making sure that all this stuff is being done. No, they can help you maybe one or twice. They can do that, but you have to be able to put the stuff out there, go out there and find the sponsorship, put things out there, especially now dealing with the internet. You put stuff out there, the people out here in the diaspora will help you. They will support you as long as you have
Mm.
a proper structure, as long as it's in a proper manner. People will support you. Do not depend on the government alone for help, because then your club now will be a failure
Yeah.
before it starts if you depend on
Before
the
it's
government.
yeah, that's true. Brandon Lewis is saying legacy is something they don't have in mind. This needs to change, right? Before I go on let me just finish Brandon's statement there, because it's an important one. And poor leadership in our country with nepotism culture. There is Dunstan Compton is saying, any space for me in sports? I am a javelin thrower that needs to be developed. Compton, send me a message. Send me a message, a private message, and we'll go further with that. Dunstan Compton, I'm a javelin thrower that needs to be developed. Yeah, send me a private message, and I will. I'll see if you can contact me after the program, and we'll see what we can do about that. Yeah. Let me see. Haran Photo is saying we need to teach treating sports as a business and advertise our abilities. More communication slash PR. When we are proud of our story and learn to tell our story effectively, businesses will want to be involved. Sponsorships aren't dead. That's that's a good point, and a very, very good point, in that You know, most times they complain about sponsorship and the lack of sponsorship, the lack thereof of sponsorship. But I can't blame the sponsors or the business community, because if you're not providing a product, and I use sports as a product, you have to be in a position where you can sell, and you can sell so effectively that it's probably a no-brainer for a sponsor. You know, whether it's your your proposal, what you're trying to do, and then sometimes people just need sponsor just for the same thing every time, every time. So the only time you need sponsor for some of them is when you have to make a trip, or you need some T-shirts, you need uniforms and things like that. So, you know, but then the sponsor will say, but what is the value of that to me? Yes, you put in X sponsor on the front or in the back or whatever. What's the value of that? And I think that is where the clubs and them have to start thinking outside of the box in terms of, if you get in sponsorship, what it is, what are the value added that you can provide a sponsor, you know, that a sponsor cannot refuse, you know, these sort of things. And, you know, sometimes I know of clubs that have used things like having the sponsors um, based on who the sponsor is in terms of companies and things. Their investment also is part of having people coming in to speak to the club members on various issues. That's part of the sponsorship. So it's not just about a uniform or, you know, a boots or a spike or whatever it is, but the sponsor could get involved in mentorship, mentoring. There was once where a sponsor was actually having members of the club doing what they call job training, job training at the establishment. It's part of a, you know, part of the sponsorship. They say we will try to empower some of those young people. You know, these are some of the things that, and you know, I know where Haran is talking about. Haran himself is a photographer, and I think he has been doing quite a lot in terms of trying to get even some of the clubs and associations to understand the whole issue of documenting. You know, at the end of the year, for example, it's no, is, you know, no reason why you cannot have a journal. Something that 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, the son or daughter or somebody can look back and flip the pages and say, hey, here is mommy, here is daddy, here is uncle, you know, and things like that. So, you know, so quite a lot.
No, and even on that point, it is good. We also, and I keep using that same thing, the way we do things in the past have to change on the on the local level, on the national level, because as a sponsor, if I decide, for example, let me use soccer. Eagle Super Strikers. I played for them when I was a young lad and growing up and so forth. So if I choose to sponsor them, but here I am driving my car down the street and I see a player and his behavior, junk on the streets, but then yet my sponsorship is on, you know, my logo is on, he's on that t-shirt later on, or he's wearing the t-shirt with my logo on it, and this is his behavior. Sponsor do not want to be a part of that. Yeah. You see, people don't want to be a part of that, and that's why I say we have to renew that mind. We have to have a different way we do certain things.
Yeah. It's all about the branding.
The whole structure have to change, and that's why they have to have discipline. That's why you see now you have to. I always believe that every sports club in Grenada should have a masseuse, but we don't have that. But we should have somebody who is medically trained, even in first aid, that will always be there in case of an emergency. That first aid have to be given. We don't have that now. So there's certain things that have to change. Things like that have to change. So we got to go on the drawing board. We got to have the people in there who have those mindset, who have those little parts of, these are the things that we need. No, even out here, I said to them, moving forward in sports here in Toronto for track and field, almost every sporting event we need to have an ambulance. We need to. You know, in 4 occasions this year in sports, we had to call an ambulance because an athlete get hurt. You know, and so we need those things right away. And that showed that if that ambulance was there right away, that athlete get, you know, taken care of right away. We need to think beyond, you know, just the where we pick up the phone or call or how we used to do things. It has to change. It has to change.
Right. All right, so let's get some comments there, and then we wrap up the program. Brandon is saying it's not really about sponsor; it's about investment in the youth and future. Good afternoon to you, Hazel. Well, look, Hazel is now on, Hazel Buckers, and as I indicated, it's just sad to know that even all that she has done for, you know, track and field in Grenada over the years, she still wants to do it. She still has the mind of doing it, but it's so sad to know that she was not even recognized, and even the promises that were made. And we'll have to fix that, Hazel. We'll have to fix that. On this program, we will start making a call. I'll have a call for every in the program at the end of the program, at least, to make a call that some recognition for Hazel. She is all about. And by the way, I am talking about it. She's not talking about it. I'm aware of it, and I'm talking about it because I know about her and her disposition. In fact, she may not have even wanted me to talk about it, but I think she deserves it. Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, Cleve. Maybe if the salient points and ideas coming from those interested are given the simple respect of a nod or thanks, more people will come forward to energize the areas where we are weak. Must admit also we have more talkers than walkers. Those with flowery words but wouldn't give a dime to add to a dollar. You see this? Nod and thank you. It makes a difference. I mean, you know that it really makes a difference. There are lots of people who, especially in the diaspora, and Cleve is one, Hazel is one, and I know countless of others who are always giving and always willing to give. And when they are asked, always going out and ask. But sometimes what's the hurtful part of it? That thank you, They're not asking for anything in return. They're not asking for anything in return, but the thank you. And I've come across people who have done this already. And there was a situation where someone sent quite a number of sporting. I'm trying to remember what exactly it was. And the next time they checked on it, it was basically in a storeroom. And it was something that kids could have used. It was in a storeroom. And the hurtful thing about it is not even the decency, one, of telling the person that you received it, and of two, of at least saying thank you. Thanks, we have received it, we really appreciate it. You know how much that could go in terms of the person ensuring that whenever the time comes again, that you will get something again. And I've seen and heard of people who say, no. Especially when it comes to some organizations and things like that. So they prefer to go directly and give something to someone. And many times, by the way, these are people who don't really ask for media coverage or be involved in the media. And I'm talking of the same Cleve and Hazel and others and things. They give, right? And don't really look for anything in return. And anything in return meaning that, you have to pay them or you have to put up a picture in the media or anything like that. So just the thank you. We have received it. Thanks very much. We appreciate it. And sometimes you can go a little further and at least let them know, what is happening, and things like that. So Hazel is saying we need SAT classes to prepare student athletes. That's also very important. And personal development is a big problem in the country on all levels. Nutrition classes for youths, etc. Thanks, Hazel. Cleve is saying so true, and I assume it's in relation to the comment about, at least saying a thank you. And Roger Duncan is saying, what should be one of the first remits of the new Minister of Sports? Well, Roger, I think you joined us late. We are saying some of the low-hanging fruits, as there are some low-hanging fruits, but we believe that there are sections of the national sports policy that we believe that could be implemented. The National Sports Council is very, very important. There are folks who recall the having a National Sports Council before, probably back in the 70s and things like that. So, and how effective sports were governed. I mean, a lot of change now, but we need to get sports back at the community level. You know, the parishes, at the community, the involvement of more sports at the primary and secondary school level, and sports at all levels, whether it's football, cricket. We talk a lot about grassroots, right? But we need to have sports, competitive sports as well too, at those levels, primary and secondary. It can't be a situation where folks of people just learning to play, kids learning to play football or learning to run or learning to, cricket when they reach at the secondary school. No, they need to be that developmental, that foundation at the secondary school level. And Claire says, let me see, I have made my last commitment to McDonald College, which I promised before 2023 intercall meet. Thank you, Clef. Thank you for all that you have been doing, especially for some of the individuals and some of the schools and all those who have been contributing. We don't want you to stop, We don't want you to stop, But at the same time, we want people who are the recipients to understand that at least, a thank you. At least say that we received it. I know of instances where people receive things and they not even the decency to say, yes, thank you, we received it. We have collected it. Situations where they have to tell them, well, it arrived, you need to collect it. And then they will say, unfortunately, we don't have money to clear it, Joel Phillips said, there are so many of us who are willing to help and in different aspects of sports in Grenada. Some of us do so for other countries, including other islands in the Caribbean for free. The problem is no respect or appreciation is given in Grenada for the efforts. We'll have to make efforts to correct that.
No, definitely. It's funny that you said that because as you know, I coach my athlete who competing for St. Vincent, and I just get the email this week that she made the Commonwealth team, and which is a really plus, So we're just in the process of preparing ourselves to go there, and the relationship and the communication that I have with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because through my athlete, I have tried many times through the Ministry of Sports in Grenada in terms of track and field, and I never had that connection or relationship that I will hope for to give a lending hand or to support in any way that I can. But a lot of things I do on my own, supporting with the St. Patrick's Irish School. A lot of stuff I do behind the scenes, not only in that, but in Ministry of Health, things that I've donated, and I still have more stuff to donate that I don't need. No, I do get a thank you, but I don't need to put myself in the media for that. I'm giving back to my country because I love my countrymen, regardless of where they are, and I want to see my country be on top of the world in everything. And I just want to do what I can do to make that happen. I'm even willing, me and they talk about it, willing to transition from Canada back to Grenada to help in any sector that needs to be helped, and then then I work my way back here just to give her my hand, because I have a lot of knowledge in a lot of things, and the experience that we have from being international and what we have learned educational wise, it is helpful to grow our country and make it better. But a lot of times we don't have to do it for doing its sake. I think the question was asked what the Minister of Health should do first is, like I said, he will be shaking up the cabinet in the Ministry of Sports and putting the right people in the place who want to do things, and restructuring sports in the parishes, putting sports back in the parishes and in schools like it should be, and then we go from there. That's what I think he should be first thing on his mind, and then we go from there.
Okay then. All right. So the final comment on the program, we try to take quite a bit. Most people have been adding their comments towards the end of the program, but it's very engaging, and we may have to, have another open discussion because it seems as if quite a lot. And so true, Joel. Don't understand why, but somehow sports is stagnant in Grenada because the same set of people charge and nothing happening. People in charge and nothing happening. 2 years of no sports and place open, but only football playing and getting things done. And Joel says most don't care about the recognition. It's all about betterment of the athletes slash players and the sports. Hazel says, I am hoping to play a bigger role on the education and sports level, maybe a banquet inviting former and present athletes and having a strategic plan to help. And Kleb says, must single out St. George's Anglican School, my alma mater, and the Christian Academy School of St. Andrew. Well, St. George's Anglican School is also my alma mater in terms of private schools. Kleb. So we're on the same level. Sports should hold elections in sporting areas where there haven't been elections for the past 2 years. Well, it has to do also with the constitution of those sporting associations. Some bodies, some are 4-year terms, some are 2 years. So it has to do with what it is. But Hazel, back to your issue about the whole issue about the banquet and inviting former and present athletes. There was once a suggestion brought to the Grenada Olympic Committee some years ago to have a sort of a gathering of the sportsmen and sportswomen in the diaspora, and at the time was using New York as a strategic place to bring them together, even some of the coaches and some of the parents of the young athletes who, and it almost was sort of different areas you're looking at because there was also almost a recruitment drive for Grenadians in the diaspora who have sons and daughters and who are willing to, represent Grenada. And they will get a better idea from the local officials of what is expected, and they can meet and discuss and, all these sort of things. But it never materialized. That was a few years ago. Plans were being made. In fact, it reached the point where we even arranged a venue. It was the St. Lucia House in Brooklyn that was arranged for that, and it was just the logistics of getting people there. It never really, materialized. Hazel Buckles, great idea. Hope it works out. Yeah. Well, we want to thank you very much. We probably, Rudion, we may have to continue this discussion because it seems as if there's a lot to be discussed and continue in terms of the discussion, and we want to probably bring in some more folks on it, like Hazel and Joel and others. We can really have a sort of roundtable discussion on those things and what we believe can be the way forward for sports. And I think that may probably be a nice segue to, for our next program, I should say. So we'll discuss it more and we'll let folks know about it. No unity. Unity is the word, Mr. Okay. So thank you very much, folks. Thank you very much, Rudian. As per usual, as I said, today, by the way, is the Canadian championships continue, right?
Yeah.
So we have the Canadian, we have the US, we have Bahamas, we have Jamaica, we have Trinidad and Tobago, among others, in terms of national championships. Well,
and just before you go, on a sad note, it was sad to see the Jamaican girls didn't get that Jamaican record for the 4x1 due to the fault of the Jamaican doping organization. It wasn't thing, it was Jamaica doping. It was their fault, and it was very silly. And it wasn't the girls' fault because they all were there to get drug tests. And it happened that they claimed because one of them get the drug test before, then they don't want to do it a second time because she get it. No. So that was that. And even the young man from Botswana in the 200, I think he also didn't get the world record as well. And I think it is because of the same thing. So, but that's just to end it in that segment. She said we're looking forward. Let's see how we go from there.
All right. Okay, then. Thank you, Mr. B and Rudian. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you also to Hazel. And hopefully we link up on our program sometime in the coming days. We can organize a
Yeah.
sort of round table where we can discuss more on those things. Thank you very much, Rudy, and it's always a pleasure having you. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for bringing the show back after
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
Like we said, things are looking good in some of us eyes for Grenada. Let us hope and let us just pray. It doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter who is in power. Let us pray that our country is being led in the right direction, and it's for the people and nothing else but for the people.
Yeah, well, we made way for the politicians, so we hope that the politicians will make way for us now in terms of hearing from them. Thank you once again.
No problem. Thank you again.
Okay, then, right. So, folks, you heard it there. That's Rudy and Sylvan. He was live in Toronto, Canada, and it's our program back again after a few weeks. And certainly, we want to thank all the folks who are part of the program, Hazel and Cleve and Edwin and Haron. Brandon, thank you very much. Joel Phillip, once again, thank you. Roger Duncan, as per usual. And Dunstan Compton, I received your message. Thank you very much for making contact. And we hope to do something. Lee Coffey and Kelvin Hector and others. Donna Joseph, thanks for opening the program. Thank you very much. And I hope to, no. Did I say I'm in Brooklyn? No, that's a lie. I wish I was in Brooklyn. I'm in Charlotte. I'm back in Charlotte, in North Carolina. Hope to be in Brooklyn sometime soon. Thank you very much once again for being part of the program, and the invitation is yours to join us again. Hopefully, we'll try to have another program in the midweek. Most likely, we'll go back to a Thursday. By the way, we had moved to Wednesday, and then we are removed Wednesday because of all the political campaign and all these things were taking place on a Wednesday and Thursday night. So we had removed our program, and then the rallies and thing on the weekend. So that's why we had suspended our program for the past few weeks to accommodate those things. But now, election come and gone, and we back with our program. But a warning to the politicians, and for those, we will be holding your feet to the fire. We are serious this time about sports. So we will be looking at the, not just the promises, because, on the campaign, you can say all sorts of things, but we want to see action. We want to see action. We want to see movement. Okay? And we'll be holding your feet to the fire. So thank you once again, folks, for being part of the program. It's always a pleasure having you and being in your company. I want you to enjoy your weekend. Ciao.